Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. Really appreciate you all. I guess I will start now. I said I was going to start in a few minutes, so here we go. All right. So, um, feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat or unmute yourselves, whatever you feel comfortable doing. My name's Delphina. Ja, trabajan nishne, twatzotni bashishtin, hanagati dashache do kia ani dashanale. I'm coming in from Phoenix, Arizona. And yeah, if you want to just share where you're coming in from in the group chat, share a little bit about yourself. If you're a parent, a student, um, what you or any questions you have on your mind right now. Also, there'll be an opportunity to answer some questions at the end as well. So yeah, feel free to share that in the chat. I'm just going to share my screen. So I work at the American Indian College Fund as a program officer in TCU capacity for student success. So I work with tribal colleges in, on the back end and manage grants on their with them. So we have a grant right now that works on cultivating Native student success. And so I work with these tribal colleges to help them in increased enrollment, retention, persistence, all of these things. But before I was in this position, I was heavily involved in financial aid. And so with my financial aid career, I actually didn't really, I didn't know anything about financial aid. I didn't know anything about FAFSA until I had to fill out the application. And so I had three older siblings, but my older siblings were out of the house. They were already working here in Phoenix, and I grew up in Holbrook, Arizona, which is a really small border town, about 30 minutes from Indian Wells, where my family is from. And so my mom and dad were actually separated. And so my mom was essentially a single parent. She took care of me and my siblings, and she had zero experience with FAFSA. She was pulled out of school in third grade, I believe, is what she made it up to. And she was raised by her great grandmother, who pulled her out to raise sheep, to learn how to weave, become a silversmith, all of these things. And my dad went to Chilocco Indian boarding school in Palaca, Oklahoma, to learn basically a trade. And so he became a carpenter, and zero FAFSA experience from either side. Needless to say, I was first generation college student, so I was the first in my family to get a bachelor's degree. I came from a low income home. My mom was on disability because after all those years of, working with her hands, she got severe arthritis to the point where she couldn't really function. And so, or her hands couldn't function. And so, yeah, and obviously disability, social security, all of those things aren't really incomes that you can, or well, not really incomes, but it's not really funds that you can, have like send your kids to college. So I got my undergraduate bachelor's degree from Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island, master's degree at ASU in Indigenous Rights and Social Justice in the American Indian Studies program, and currently working on my PhD at ASU in the Justice Studies program, focusing on Indigenous feminisms, activism, and story work. And as far as my financial aid career, I kind of just fell into it somehow. I started off at the Maricopa Community College call center here in Phoenix. And so I knew nothing about financial aid, but I had to learn quick if I was going to answer some of those calls. And so that was my first experience. And then I also worked at the Wells Fargo Student Loan Department, which was really, really hard. Not in terms of the work itself, but basically pushing student loans, private student loans, onto students who needed money. Because oftentimes a lot of those students had, either no credit or they were just starting up and, getting these loans with high interest rates. And by the time some of them were graduating, they had accumulated hundreds, like even, well, like tens of thousands in debt. But also there was a student who had over $120,000 in student loan debt. And so that was really difficult. But then I started a position at ASU as a financial aid counselor, where I really enjoyed the work that I did. And then I didn't put it on here, but I was also working at South Mountain Community College, helping students complete their FAFSA. And I worked there part-time while I was completing, I was a teaching associate at ASU, and teaching associate salary is not enough for me to, live off of. And so that's why I got a part-time job. And so when I'm talking about FAFSA, there are a lot of things that kind of come up. Like, what is the FAFSA? So FAFSA is a free application for federal student aid. You should never have to pay to complete the FAFSA. Everyone should be filling out the FAFSA. I still fill out the FAFSA as a PhD student. Because when I started my master's program, I went in there not knowing how I was going to fund my master's program. And so when I filled out the FAFSA, I actually qualified for a grant from my college, from ASU. It was called the University Grant, and it gave me $5,000 per semester. So that was more than enough to pay for my tuition for fall, and then again for spring. And so that's how I funded my master's program, is by filling out the FAFSA and getting a university grant through through ASU. And then as a PhD student, as a master's and PhD student, the only thing I'm qualified for is a unsubsidized loan. I never take the loan initially, unless I have to. So I've gone pretty far into my program without having to take a student loan. But with the graduate program, that's basically what you qualify for regardless. And so I fill out my FAFSA because there are university grant funds available for students who are working on their PhD, and then I apply for scholarships where sometimes they need that information. So filling out the FAFSA is really important, especially when it becomes available. So I know that it was delayed this year, unfortunately, but everyone should still be filling it out as soon as it's available. As far as filling out the FAFSA, always go to a government website. Never go to a .org or .net, because sometimes they charge you. So when you're filling out the FAFSA, make sure that you have your parents' email address, as well as an FSA ID, and that's on the next slide, you and your parents' social security number. If you're not a U.S. citizen, you'll need your alien registration number, as well as you and your parents' federal income tax returns and W-2s for the year that FAFSA is requesting. There's also something called the data retrieval tool that's available to use that imports your income information or your tax information directly into the FAFSA. Also, your parents' date of birth. A lot of students, surprisingly, don't know that information, or especially the year, which is understandable. The date that the parents, either when their marital status changed, so if they got married, remarried, divorced, separated, whatever that is, and then also bank statements and records of investment or records of untaxed income. And that's if applicable. So if you or your parents are like, we don't have this, or we don't know what this is, probably doesn't apply to you, and it's totally fine that you don't have it. So I mentioned the FSA ID. FSA ID actually allows parents and students to sign the FAFSA electronically and submit it ASAP. So the parent and student will both need to complete the FSA ID, or actually create an FSA ID in order to submit the FAFSA online. Unfortunately, the federal government doesn't consider a student independent of their parents until they're 24 years old, and that's the U.S. Department of Education. So even if you're 18 and you live with your parents, um, or you move out of the house when you're 18, whatever that is, federal government says, hey, you're still under 24, so you can't submit this alone. So you're going to need that FSA ID as well as your parents. Um, and similar to the FAFSA, you're just going to need your own social security number, your parents' social security numbers for all of these things. And one of the things that I always recommend students do is to update their FSA ID, especially if they move, get a new phone number or an email address, and make sure that you are protecting your information because it is sensitive information. It's connected to your social, your date of birth, your financial aid, all of these things. And I just want to go over some myths with FAFSA. So oftentimes, I've heard in the past that a lot of students are concerned about, some aspects of FAFSA, or say that maybe FAFSA doesn't apply to them because of XYZ, especially income. So they'll say, my parents make too much money. So as a PhD student who is not married and does not have kids, I still fill out the FAFSA. And if I was an undergrad student applying for FAFSA, I probably wouldn't get the Pell Grant. I would probably still would be getting unsubsidized loans. But you never know if you'll qualify for financial aid from your college. So make sure that you do continue submitting the FAFSA. Also, FAFSA might be a requirement for different scholarships. Parents don't support me. So again, federal government or Department of Ed considers you independent when you turn 24 or you graduate with your bachelor's. If you're under 24 and you're like, hey, I have my own job, I rent my own apartment, I pay my own bills, my parents don't support me financially, unfortunately, you're still considered a dependent student. And yeah, you're going to have to provide parent information. So providing, let's see, I only need to submit my FAFSA once. I've heard students say, I submitted my FAFSA last year. Why am I not getting a financial aid award letter, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, because you have to submit it every single year. You and your parents' income and circumstances change every year, and your FAFSA does need to reflect that. So sometimes, say for instance, a student may not qualify for the Pell Grant their freshman year, but then maybe their parents, some circumstance changed, and now the next year they'd qualify for the Pell Grant. It really just depends, because financial aid eligibility includes changes in maybe family income, as well as the number of family members that your parents are supporting. Sometimes, a lot of Native students and families will have multi-generational households. So maybe one year, grandma wasn't included in the household, but then the next year, your mom's taking care of grandma and grandpa, or just grandma, or, multiple family members, maybe nieces and nephews. And so you can include those family members that your parents are essentially supporting. So that also is something to, consider when you're submitting FAFSA. As far as grades, GPA is important to help you get into a good school and get, academic scholarships. But when you first apply for FAFSA, grades aren't considered. But if you want to continue receiving federal financial aid throughout your college career, make sure that you're maintaining a GPA of 2.0 or higher. passing 2/3 of your courses, and then you're on track toward your degree. So as long as you're passing your classes and maintaining that GPA, you're good to go. Paying the, okay, so I forgot to update this portion, but it's not the EFC anymore. It's called the SAI, or Student Aid Index. And so when you submit your FAFSA, you'll see a confirmation page, and it shows you something called the SAI. The SAI actually tells the financial aid office how much money you are eligible for. And so sometimes the SAI will show all zeros. That means that you're eligible for the full amount of the Pell Grant and you have a higher financial need, in which case you probably qualify for more need-based aid. So FAFSA being the only form that you have to fill out, because I've heard students say, where's my scholarship? You have to apply for individual scholarships like the American Indian Fund's Full Circle Scholarship, for instance, or tribal scholarships or scholarships from nonprofits. Wherever you find scholarships, you're going to have to apply for those. FAFSA does determine what type of federal aid you're eligible for, and that includes grants, federal work study, and student loans. Also, with the FAFSA, saying you can submit at any time is correct, essentially, if it's before the deadline. But the new FAFSA became available on December 2023, and I know there were some issues with it. But you want to make sure that you're submitting it still as soon as it's available, because there is funding that's available on a first come, first served basis. And so you want to make sure that you're getting all the money that you're eligible for. Also, there's different scholarships out there that do require students to fill out FAFSA for their scholarship deadline. So make sure that you are filling it out. I have my students, when I was working with students on the FAFSA, October 1st is when it would come out previously. And I would say, let's make appointments, let's get this filled out, let's complete it as soon as it's available, so that they didn't have to think about it for the rest of, maybe their senior year or the rest of their academic year, and that the FAFSA was completed. So with this FAFSA right now, this FAFSA that's opened recently in December 2023, that FAFSA is going to cover students for fall of 2024, so coming up in this August, spring of 2025, and summer of 2025. And that application will close June 30th of 2025. So if you're thinking about taking summer classes that maybe start July 1st, fill out that FAFSA so that you can get financial aid for those summer classes. And then if you're filling out the FAFSA and you're like, well, my parents don't have an income, so I don't know what to put here. Similar situation with me. My parents didn't have a taxable income. So my mom, again, she was on disability, and that wasn't a taxable income, but it's not a requirement in order to fill out FAFSA. You can put zeros on that income portion if your parents didn't make income in that tax year. And so when FAFSA is requesting income from that from the tax year that it needs, and your parents didn't work and they didn't file taxes, it's okay to put zeros there. But if your parents received SSI or Social Security, or Social Security like disability income, they don't have to report this on the income portion of the FAFSA. They can report it in a separate section on the FAFSA. FAFSA is complicated. I actually helped someone recently with the new FAFSA, and I was surprised at how fast we completed it. I think it was maybe like 15 minutes, because they removed a lot of the questions on the FAFSA, which was so helpful. And then when you fill out the FAFSA online on FAFSA.gov, if you select a question, or if it doesn't apply to you, so if you're checking boxes or it's answering you questions about this, that, and the other, it's going to remove that question It's going to remove a question based off of how you've answered it. So then there's additional questions that you may not have to answer, but they removed a ton of questions and it went so fast. Don't use the paper version because that gets super complicated. But if you have the list of the documents that you need to complete FAFSA, if you have your parent available to help you out, it goes so much quicker. And then you also have the data retrieval tool, which will pull tax information directly from the IRS website into your FAFSA. And there is an option when you get to the income portion that will do it automatically for you. And then once you complete it the first time, you have the FAFSA renewal option, which goes so much quicker. And that's what I do. It literally takes me 5 minutes now to complete my FAFSA. So with the FAFSA, people will say, I'm done with the FAFSA. That's it. I'm done. I don't have to do anything else. 30% of students who complete FAFSA are selected for something called verification by the Department of Education. It's a process where students will provide additional documentation to the school they plan to attend to verify some of the information they reported on FAFSA. So I mentioned the data retrieval tool. That's probably the flag that gets raised the most, is when students will input income information manually. So if you're looking at your parents' taxes and you're like putting in the information, most likely will get flagged for verification, which is fine. You just have to submit your parents' tax returns or W-2s. But if you use a data retrieval tool, that will probably lessen your chances of getting selected for verification. And so I know, again, that there was a delay with FAFSA, unfortunately, this year, but it is really important to compare the financial aid awards that you're receiving from your colleges, especially if you're looking to graduate from college with little or no debt. Just compare those financial aid award packages and look beyond the tuition and see what other fees they're applying, because when you look at cost of attendance, they tack on all sorts of different fees just so that you get a full overview. So for instance, like room and board, if you don't plan on staying on campus, you can remove that portion. Also, understanding the difference between free money, like grants and scholarships, and loans, which you're going to have to pay back, because colleges offer generous financial aid packages, meeting the full financial need. And then, you may not need to take out a loan, but then they will include the loan as well. So make sure that when you're looking at your financial aid award packages, that you're seeing all of the grant and scholarship aid applied to what you're looking at for the cost of attendance, and not including the loan. And if you need the loan, again, you can use that. And so some of the terms that I want to familiarize you all with is student aid index, cost of attendance, and need. So student aid index is basically, used to be called the expected family contribution, but SAI provides the financial aid office with how much, SAI comes from FAFSA. FAFSA gives this number to determine how much money you're eligible for. And so when you complete your FAFSA, you'll see the SAI, and you don't have to figure out this calculation yourself. It's a formula that's determined by FAFSA, and some of the information that you put in, like parents' tax information or untaxed income, assets, benefits, or family size, those things will factor into how much money you're eligible for, or it'll determine the SAI. Financial aid office will determine how much you're eligible for. When you see the SAI, they'll use that and say, okay, well, with this number, we're going to determine what the student's need is. And how they do that is they take the cost of attendance, and with the cost of attendance, it's essentially the amount it'll cost you to go to school, but it's always an estimate. So this number, again, will vary depending on where you go to school. So if it's in-state, out-of-state, tribal college, private university, if you enroll in a meal plan, if you're staying on campus, if you're staying with parents, if you choose to live off campus. And so it's really important to look at your um, the different colleges that you are thinking about attending. So again, I went to Brown University. Brown University is a private college and it's an Ivy League school. So it was super pricey. Again, I didn't have any money. My parents didn't have any money. They couldn't just write me a check. And so when I went there, I had to take out a student loan and I ended up with about $35,000 in student loan debt by attending Brown because the tuition was so high. I was offered a full ride scholarship to Arizona State University, but I opted to go to Brown, and I'm happy with my choice because it provided me with a lot of opportunities that I don't know that I would have had I stayed in Arizona. So it really just depends when you're looking at cost of attendance. Again, what's included in that? So like books and supplies, and these are all estimates, right? So if you go to a private university, you're looking at about $62,000 per year. Tribal colleges about $49.75 per year, and then state universities $28,029 per year. And now that I am at ASU with my master's and my PhD, having that experience, I know that with the things that I pay for is going to be tuition and books and supplies, maybe some like student activities fees. But because I'm not going to the school or not going to campus anymore, I don't have to worry about a parking permit. I don't pay a registration fee or a technology fee or a transportation fee. I don't pay, like I pay, I think, for the student activities fee, student ID card, don't pay that, or orientation. I have my own health insurance, so I don't pay for that. Room and board, I definitely spend less living off campus and buying my own food, so I don't pay for that. I don't pay for books and supplies anymore. So the only thing that I pay for is tuition and probably my student activities fee. And so when I apply for tribal scholarships or nonprofit scholarships or even funding from my school, those are whatever I apply for goes directly to tuition and my student activities fee. Anything left over goes directly to me. I've had like $10,000 refunds where I've used that money to pay for my rent. Like I've used that money to pay for gas to get to school, for books that I needed for my research. And so there's a lot of different opportunities, especially, and this isn't just for masters, but it's also for if you're planning on, say you live in Tempe and you're going to ASU and you live with parents and your parents don't require you to pay for anything. The only thing you're looking at to pay for is probably tuition, books and supplies, and then maybe some of those initial fees like orientation, student ID cards. But it's really important to leverage, to compare your opportunities. So, tribal colleges, universities, and community colleges are also another option to start getting your general education. And a lot of TCUs are now offering free tuition or reduced tuition, or they're paying for students' education. And then, you could apply for the federal Pell Grant and get additional money to pay for maybe some student activities fee or registration fee, like those fees that you normally wouldn't or normally would have to pay for out of pocket. So it really is important to look at your options and decide which cost of attendance is more manageable. So when you're looking at the cost of attendance, you're like, wow, this is too much. I can't afford this. remember that cost of attendance is an estimate. So those numbers I showed you, those aren't exact. Those are estimates, and they vary. So the amounts aren't exact. So tuition could vary depending on the program you're enrolled in, or if you attend an out-of-state school, the tuition could increase. So think about those different opportunities that you have. Also, changing the meal plan. This is something I shared before where I wasn't using my meal credits. I was at the highest tier for my meal plan, thinking I was going to eat 3 times a day, and I just didn't have the time. So I would have like cereal in my dorm for the morning, and then lunch and dinner would vary depending on what I had or if I was able to eat. Like it happens, unfortunately. And so you could also change your meal plan to lower the cost. My niece did that her freshman year. She thought she was at the highest meal plan, and I believe it was her mid-semester she decided, I don't use my meal plan as much as I thought I would. So she reduced her meal plan. She received a refund from the unused meals that she wasn't going to, have during the semester. And she bought groceries for her room so that she could have, breakfast in her room, and then maybe lunch and dinner at the cafeteria. Also, on-campus housing is always going to be more expensive than living off campus. And so living off campus with roommates is an option for you, or living with your parents at home. That's also another option. And if you can't afford the cost of attendance, you know what? Apply for scholarships. Apply for as many scholarships as you possibly can. But ensure that you're looking also at the college website so that you can determine what your path might look like. It could be attending community college, university, TCU, a trade school, going to the military, whatever that path looks like. Look at your options and weigh your options, decide what you want to do, and then do some research. What are the requirements to getting to that path? What could you be doing right now to get there? And so I mentioned need. So what does need have to do with college? Once you've submitted your FAFSA, you'll know how much money you've been awarded as far as financial aid, as far as federal Pell Grant and student loans. When you know how much need you have, you can figure out how much need-based aid you're working with, or how much need-based aid you can receive in scholarships and grants. And so when you're looking at need-based aid, it's awarded based on how much need you have. So you could take your cost of attendance minus your student aid index number, and that'll tell you what your need is. So for instance, if your cost of attendance is $16,000 and your SAI is $1,000, your need's going to be $15,000. So you'll be eligible for $15,000 in need-based aid. And so this is important because not all of that money, if you get $15,000 in scholarships and grants, free money, all of that money minus what you owe to the school basically goes to you. So if you have $15,000 in scholarships and grants, the school takes what they need, or what your balance is. So say you owe $10,000 that semester, you could actually, or that, yeah. So say you owe, $5,000 that semester, you could actually then receive like $10,000 back in a refund. And so this is generally for, this is generally like a yearly amount. So for instance, $16,000 for the year, your SAI is $1,000, $15,000 is your need. And so that'd be about $7,500 per semester. And if you receive $5,000, if your balance is $5,000 for one semester, you get $2,500 back in scholarships and grants if you've applied for up to that amount. So it's really important to just completely apply for everything that you might be eligible for. Also, some of the federal programs you'll be eligible for is like the federal Pell Grant, FSEOG, direct subsidized loan, federal Perkins loan, work study, and then also need-based scholarships and grants. And so when you're, mid-semester maybe, and you need help figuring out what your need is, take your cost of attendance, subtract your SAI, and then it'll show you your need. And then if you've applied for, if your need is again like 15,000, that means that you can apply for $15,000 in scholarships and grants. And then once you've hit that amount, your funds will basically pay for your cost or your balance that you owe to the school, and you get a refund. So that's something that's really great. I'm speaking from experience where if I've applied for like for my PhD program, they paid for my tuition. I had to pay for the fees. They gave me health insurance and a stipend to teach every single semester. And so I still applied for grants and scholarships. But since none of that money was going toward my tuition, it would pay for my fees, and then I would just get a really big refund every year. And so, or at the beginning of every semester. And I would use that money to pay for my rent, to pay for gas, to pay for books I needed. I got an iPad to like help with, organizing my reading, things like that. And it was really helpful to have those grants and scholarships that I applied for. And I've been applying for grants and scholarships since I was like a freshman in high school, if I was eligible for it. So everyone should be applying for grants and scholarships. Oftentimes students will actually only fill out the demographic portion of the scholarship application. So they'll forget to submit or do any other part of the scholarship. And they'll be like, oh yeah, my name, my address, all this stuff, and they'll forget to do the rest of it. Or then some students will forget to submit maybe their transcript, or they won't do the essay. They'll forget to email their reference. So it really is important that you submit all required documents, but also that you're still submitting everything, even if you don't think that you're going to get the scholarship. Organizations also create wait lists for students often. And so sometimes a student who was offered the scholarship initially, maybe they're taking a year off, or maybe they changed plans and they're going to a trade school and that scholarship doesn't apply to that. That means that scholarship needs to go to the next person who submitted all the documentation and applied. So make sure that you're always applying. So what scholarship should you apply for? Again, research what scholarships you're eligible for, but also apply for those scholarships and some that you might be on the fence about. I've had so many colleagues who are like, the National Science Foundation, for instance, I'm not in science, like that's not my specialty. My area is Indigenous feminism, activism, and story work. But the component that could apply to the science portion, right, is maybe a literature review. So doing the research on what that might look like. That, you could maneuver and change your application to work with what they're requesting. So it's really important to apply for any scholarships, and some that you might be on the fence about, because you could be fitting into that realm, or you could mold your research or the work that you're doing into what they're requesting. Also apply for those local scholarships. I got a bunch of like little scholarships in high school that accumulated when I attended my first year in college. And so applying for those local scholarships, private and nonprofit organizations, and then checking your scholarship, your school scholarship portal. So ASU has a scholarship portal only for ASU students. So it's important that you look through the portal and see what scholarships you're eligible for, but also the pool of scholarship applicants is going to be smaller. When should I apply for scholarships? So start looking now, because most scholarship portals open in the winter and go into the or close in the spring. Deadlines are approaching quickly. Like for the American Indian College Fund, we have a scholarship open right now, and it closes May 31st. So if you're going to apply for a scholarship with us, apply by May 31st. And then unfortunately, I've applied at the very last minute on some scholarships, and there was so many people trying to get their scholarships in by the deadline time on the day that I wasn't able to even get into the portal, which really stunk. But now I know that. And so I'm like, hey, you got to apply at least a week before, or at least even a day before, just so you don't get in that situation. And then keep in mind that some scholarships do have hard deadlines, while others have rolling deadlines where you can apply year round. Again, nonprofit organizations, a good place to start. College funds, we have our scholarship available or portal open until May 31st. And then Native Forward, they're also, we collaborate a lot with them, and they have applications available until June 1st. And so both of our organizations offer undergraduate and graduate scholarships. Your parents' employers, so if your parents work for a corporation, nonprofit, whatever, sometimes their businesses, the organizations or nonprofits, whatever it is, they might have scholarships available. My sister works at the Mayo Clinic, and my niece actually applied for a scholarship through the Mayo Clinic and got it. So that's, really important. And that scholarship, I believe, covered her for all 4 years, or a portion of her tuition. Your college university portal again, and then tribal scholarship offices. So a lot of times when I reviewed scholarship applications, I always encourage students to say that they want to apply for scholarships to graduate debt-free, so they don't get any student loans, to ensure that college education is paid for and they can focus on their studies. Also that they had extra money to pay for educational related expenses like I did with, any books I might need or equipment that might help, organize my research, that sort of thing. Also so that you're not stressing about how you're paying for education. And so some of the ways that, with FAFSA in general, what are grants? So grants, free money, doesn't have to be repaid. There's the Pell Grant, but there's also grants from your college, like the university grant or the supplemental grant that depend on need. And then there's federal work study. So I was a federal work study student. I worked on campus, and worked part-time in a tutoring office. And so when I worked there, I actually had to apply for the job. When I got the job, the financial aid office only provided a certain amount of money for that job, so that I couldn't exceed that amount. And so they provided me with what I was eligible for. So if you're interested in federal work study and working on campus, make sure that you answer yes to the FAFSA question on the application, asking if you're interested. Student loans are like, they're I have my qualms about student loans, and I'm sure much of you also do, but there is the federal student loan program, or it's called the direct loan program, that provides 4 different types of student loans. So if you're an undergraduate student and you have financial need, you'll be offered the direct subsidized loan. Subsidized loan is only for undergraduate students. And with the subsidized loan, the federal government or the US Department of Education pays the interest while you're in school. Once you've graduated or if you leave school completely, at that point, interest begins to accrue 6 months after you've graduated. With the unsubsidized loan, it's not based on financial needs, so everybody can get it. Sometimes you'll see both the subsidized and unsubsidized, or you'll see one, or you'll see the only the unsubsidized loan. And so with the unsubsidized loan, once the funds have been dispersed to your account, that's when interest begins to accrue. Plus loans are for graduate and professional students, and also parents of dependent undergrad students. So I've only seen a handful of students, parents apply for this, and that's usually because it was a California student wanting to come to ASU. They are credit-based loans, so you or your parents need to have, they can't have adverse credit history, which means like bankruptcy, that sort of thing. But generally, it's better if you need to take a plus loan to get a plus loan through Department of Education rather than going to like Wells Fargo or Bank of America or any of those other banks. And that's, I think I have one more. Yeah. So determining if you need to take out a student loan, maybe, but check your award letter, see if it's something that you actually need, because the school is going to offer it to you. Doesn't mean you have to take it. You can just leave it there. Don't even touch it if you don't want it. You can decline, whatever you feel comfortable with. But if you're attending a community college or a TCU, chances are the federal Pell Grant will be more than enough to pay for your tuition. Or if you have a lower amount of the Pell Grant, then you would have to pay maybe a little bit out of pocket. If you're attending a state university, private university, or out of state university, you should definitely apply for as many scholarships as you possibly can so you have enough to cover your expenses. It's totally up to you to take the student loan, but please borrow responsibly. Remember, you're going to have to pay this back and you don't have to accept the full amount. So if you have like, a balance, a small balance, don't take out the full amount of the student loan. Just take out what you need, and your financial aid counselor can help you determine how much you actually need to take out. They can update that amount too, and then you just go in and accept it. So yeah, and that's pretty much it. I appreciate your time. It looks like I'm just looking at the Kiani. Okay. Oh, how cool. Oh, thank you all so much for attending. I really appreciate you being here. Does anyone have any questions? I know that was a lot. I was just trying to cover a lot. Yes, of course. Absolutely. It was my pleasure. Thank you again for being here. Really appreciate you all so much. And have a good rest of your Sunday. Try to relax and soak up all the information. This is going on for 2 more days, I believe. So yeah, let us know if you have any questions. People are super helpful at the College Fund, and I'm also here. I'm putting my email there. So if you have any questions, if anything pops up and you're like, hey, I forgot to ask this question, or I'm a parent and I wanted clarification on blah, 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 whatever it might be, just send me a message. Or if you're interested in attending, private university, I can talk about that too, or provide you with information. Yeah, thank you again so much. Y'all have a great rest of your Sunday. Yeah,